Hey guys, it's Saturday and you know the drill. I'm here to review an episode of an animated superhero television show. Today it's the Season 1 episode of Batman Beyond titled A Touch of Curare. And as always, I will be spoiling things, so if you don't like spoilers, leave now and forever hold your peace. Or if you don't mind spoilers, then stick around as I'm about to summarize the events of the episode before I get into the review itself. Either way, you have been warned. Commissioner Barbara Gordon's husband is set to testify in the trial against an international arms dealer, so an assassin from the Society of Assassins is sent to silence him. Curare, we're told, is the best in the business. The police have to protect Barbara's husband Sam, while Batman also tries to help. This is problematic, as we see that Barbara is not as okay with the Batman as her father was. Nonetheless, even with her reservations, Barbara seems to come to grips with the fact that sometimes Batman is needed, and she doesn't arrest him at the end of the episode. While Batman is able to fend off Curare long enough for Sam to be able to testify, at which point, according to Bruce, if a member of the Society fails in their assignment, they are hunted down by the Society themselves. Hey, I wonder how Bruce would have known that they do this if they've never had to do it before like he says. Anyway, that's the episode. So I've got mixed feelings on this episode. On the one hand, it's a really exciting episode. I've always thought so. Sometimes you really like an episode or a movie in your youth, but as an adult you see it for what it really is, which is something that's not as good, but I still really enjoyed this episode. The heck for leather action is great, and the more quiet scenes are also awesome because they tell us some of what we've missed in between Batman the Animated Series and Batman Beyond. But even though I thoroughly enjoyed this episode, it's not without its problems, which did jump out at me when I watched it this time. Specifically, I question just how Curare fails in her assignment to kill Sam. Let's take in all of the facts. Curare is the best assassin out there according to Bruce. Again, how exactly would he know this being out of the Batmaning business for so long? Terry hasn't been Batman that long, and he hasn't really trained at all. I refuse to believe that a teenager who gets his fighting experience from high school wrestling is somehow able to stop the best assassin in the world from completing her mission. Now, if this had been any of the other members of the Bat family, I maybe could buy it. In the comics, Bruce and Tim actually trained with assassins, and so it would make sense that they would be able to take out someone like this. But Terry, it just doesn't add up. To add insult to injury, the circumstances in which Curare fails are just stupid. There's several instances where one or more characters in the episode do something stupid just so that the plot of the episode can happen in the way that it needs to happen. For instance, Curare is able to trap Batman under this ginormous light fixture, and she just leaves him there while she goes after the district attorney. Okay, I know that Batman isn't the target, and maybe it's seen as unprofessional to kill someone who you're not ordered to kill, but Batman is effectively preventing you from completing your mission. Maybe just stab him in the head with your magic sword thing, and then go do your thing. And no, I don't want Batman dead, but I also don't want characters in the story to hold the idiot ball just so that Batman can be victorious. I want him to succeed because he's good, not because his enemies are really stupid. And speaking of characters doing stupid things, at one point we see Terry has the camouflage feature of the suit turned on, and he attacks Curare. Why doesn't he just keep that thing on the entire time? He turns it off to continue his attack, but it seems like that would be a really surefire way to get yourself killed if you're going up against the world's greatest assassin. Keep that thing on, and she's not going to be able to see where your attacks are coming from. Now, admittedly, she might be able to find a way to keep attacking you even though she can't see you, but it seems like you would want to keep every advantage that you've had. I've also talked before about how some of the villains in this series work really well, like Derek Powers and Ink, and some of the villains that I've talked about don't work nearly as well, and I've mentioned Curare as being one of those kinds of villains. But I think after watching this episode, it's not that she's a bad villain, really. She has the potential to be a very good villain. The previous Batman had enemies like Lady Shiva, the League of Assassins, and Ra's al Ghul, who operated more on a global scale, and were much more formidable as foes than your average gun-toting psycho in Gotham City. So to bring in someone who is closer to those kinds of enemies for Terry to fight is a good move for this series. It could have even been a good way to force Terry to train harder, realizing that the gadgets on the suit and some expertise in street fighting just don't make him a good enough Batman against someone like Curare. That would have been a really neat thing to see. But this episode kinda throws that all away with the whole thing about the Society now hunting down Curare. And I get the feeling that that was only thrown in there so that people like me would not be asking, hey, why is she not coming after Sam or Batman again? So while I may have said that Curare isn't a good workable villain for this series in the past, I think I would like to change my tune a little bit after rewatching this episode. It's not that she isn't a good villain, she had the chance to be a different kind of villain for Terry to fight, which is never a bad thing. But the way this episode ends, it's like it goes out of its way to make Curare an unusable character for future episodes. And apparently she does come back in Season 2, but I'll be honest, even though I've seen every episode of this series at least once, I do not remember her being in this series after her introduction. So I guess we'll wait until she comes back and I can see how the episode uses her again. But I will say, I probably would have been including Curare in the same category as Powers and Ink if this episode had just ended in such a way where Curare could show up multiple times in this series and become a recurring threat for Batman. Oh well. I've been complaining a lot about this episode, so what are some things that I like about it? Like I said, I like that we get some backstory about some of the stuff that we missed in between this series and Batman the Animated Series. I'm not especially crazy about the Bruce-Barbara romantic angle that this episode introduces retroactively, but since it does away with this as soon as it introduces it, it's not really an element of the mythos that I'm going to have to deal with episode upon episode, so I guess that's a good thing. I also like that this episode finally kinda has a confrontation between Terry and Barbara. Up until now, we've had Bruce and Barbara speaking, and we've seen Barbara doing police work on her own, but we've never really gotten to see just what she thinks of the new Batman. And while I think it was maybe a little too easy that she finally relented and decided that Batman is good for the city, I also don't really see any other way that that subplot could have ended, so I guess I'm okay with that. And I really like that the target for the Society of Assassins is Barbara's husband. That makes the whole debacle seem much more personal for her, which it just wouldn't be if it was Joe Schmo who was testifying. But also, her intense refusal to let Batman help out really illustrates just how firmly against Batman she is. Even though she knows that Batman is helping, and if he wasn't there, there would be a lot more bloodshed than there was, and her husband's life is on the line, she still doesn't want Batman involved in this scene. Maybe that's why it felt so false when she finally decided to let Terry go and not arrest him at the end. That's about all I have to say about this episode. It's a fun, high-octane episode, but when you slow down to think about it a little bit, it falls apart pretty quickly. And when you think of all the ways that this episode could have contributed to the overall mythos of the show in producing a new recurring villain for Batman to fight, then when you realize it squandered those opportunities, it's even worse. But it's still a pretty decent episode, and I will no doubt watch it again sometime in the future when I'm in a mood for some Batman Beyond. So I hope you guys liked the episode and my review of it. If you did, be sure to come back next Saturday for my thoughts on an episode of Batman the Animated Series. And the weekend after that, I'll be talking about the Season 1 finale of Batman Beyond. And if you did like this episode, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And also be sure to come back throughout the week to see some of the other videos that I'll be doing. I'll see you guys later, and in the meantime, have a great rest of the day.